The Karate Kid's Daniel LaRusso and Cobra Kai is Daniel LaRusso may have landed in two different places, but the trade-off for what we have with Cobra Kai, I was willing to take that one for the team to launch the show to get to the place where we are now. So I kind of look a little smart or lucky, maybe both. Hi, I'm Ralph Macchio, and these are some of my iconic characters. The Karate Kid.
Yeah, faucet's really leaking there. Well, can you come fix it? Well, can I tell my mom when?
When what?
When are you gonna fix the faucet?
After.
After what?
After.
Once Pat and I got together, that was the magic that you felt was special. The movie itself, I had no idea. Yes, the guy who directed Rocky was directing the movie, John G. Avildsen. So we had all those components, and Robert Kamen's script was just wonderful. But was it corny? Was it people going to watch a movie about karate? Is it, the waxing cars and painting fences? And we knew the payoff scenes, the chores that were paying off was important. But would it hit on all cylinders? You just don't know that. Daniel LaRusso is an essence of me, probably a little more amped up with his temper and knee jerk. I analyze stuff a little more. If I got my ass kicked on the beach in 1984 by a bunch of motorcycle driving karate guys, I probably would leave well enough alone. Where LaRusso, it makes for a much better movie if he doesn't. But he was the every kid next door who had no business winning anything. So therein lies the wish fulfillment and the aspirational part of that character. I know how important it was to Pat to have the authenticity, and even going into the first film, into Miyagi and the backstory, and he is that soulful magic and that depth of character. And it was so important to Pat to be authentic to this Japanese American heritage. In the case of Miyagi, it was Okinawa. So when Karate Kid 2 came along and it was about, the other culture, which was such a smart way, it had a different look. It was a love story. It was a dual love story. You took it out of the valley. So I remember the first draft of the script, I say, all I do is ask questions. And the writer said, yeah, well, you're in another country. He's like, what's this, Mr. Miyagi? What's that, Mr. Miyagi? But we dialed that down a little bit. And then there's that love story with Kumiko. And then, of course, you had to have a nemesis that was, would beat the hell out of Daniel LaRusso, because what's Karate Kid without Daniel LaRusso getting his ass kicked and getting in trouble and going back for more? That's sort of the recipe. And it's kind of ahead of its time. Certainly in the Karate Kid, the whole Japanese internment camp, that was the first major motion picture Hollywood studio movie that ever addressed that sort of dark time in our history. So as much as you could talk about Karate Kid being a popcorn movie of the 80s, it had those elements, and that's what separates it. Karate Kid 3 was a challenge. I always felt that script didn't find the freshness for Daniel LaRusso going forward. It was about, we had the crane kick in the first movie. You had all the magic of the chores and the lessons. And Karate Kid 3 was more about the kata and the different types of martial arts. Cobra Kai. By the time we got to, now we're jumping, 30-something years later, everything hurts a little more, takes a lot longer to stretch. It's injury prevention at this point. I got away with one good kick.
What kind of karate training were you doing in Cobra Kai as compared to Karate Kid?
Yeah, well, in Karate Kid, in the first film, I had about 5 weeks of training. And it was simplistic training because that was the whole point. It's about avoiding getting hit, and it's karate for defense only, and it wasn't about attack and big fight sequences. And it's still that way, that Gojuru style of Miyagi's karate. It should be 2-3 moves and out. That's the whole point. It's not to have a knockdown, drag out, kind of thing. It's getting yourself out. It's self-defense. The thing is, Billy Zabka and I talk about this. We did a sequence where we have a sort of rematch.
Score 1-0 Lawrence. Hey!
Fight!
It was really important for us to play it from the perspective of what the character's stakes were. It was about, we were trying to do what was right for the kids in the show. It wasn't about two guys now in their 50s rematching their 18-year-old fight, 17-year-old fight. You know, we don't move. I don't spring back the way I did when I was 21. So we wanted it to be true to how guys at this age would fight. So it had its own feel to it. And I was really proud of that. I was proud that it came from the perspective of the characters. And it came from the perspective of the guys at this age, and we weren't trying to do a fight like, say, Tanner and Sholo, two of our young studs in the Cobra Kai cast, or Jacob for that matter. They're so incredible. They're like acrobatic, as big and as heightened as the tone of that series gets, and how the San Fernando Valley is like a superhero. It's like Thanos is in a gi on Ventura Boulevard and he must be stopped. It's grounded in the characters you care about and the heart and the soul that was always ingrained in the source material, which was the Karate Kid, and, you know, it's fathers and sons and mentors and overcoming obstacles. And as long as that heart is there, we care. And in Cobra Kai also, it's important to have Miyagi woven throughout the show. I couldn't have signed on unless that was part of the plans. I'm really proud of that, and the writers do a great job.
I've been thinking about you a lot lately. You know, it's funny. When I was a kid, you seemed to always have all the answers, and I guess I thought when I got older, I'd have it all figured out too.
What really engaged me during the pitch, and it was so well thought out, and I had just seen Creed, and that's sort of like, how do you come into the Rocky Balboa story from another angle? The attention they paid to the young cast, the Miguel character, the Robbie character, the Samantha character, and seeing the future of the next generation of Karate Kids, if you will. That was the stuff that was the most engaging. Where LaRusso sat in the world was not necessarily what I would have written. I joke with them even to this day, our three creators. You know, I say, at what point did you start thinking of, okay, how does this work? What's the honesty for Daniel LaRusso? You could feel that the initial concept is like, okay, here's Johnny Lawrence. How could we make his life as miserable as possible? What could we have LaRusso be doing that makes it worse for him? Make him a car dealer, make him on billboards. He's on television commercials. So then I'm like, okay, what's the honesty for LaRusso at that point? There's a push and a pull there. And it was about the long game. Fortunately, the series is going long. You know, I would always argue LaRusso had this great mentor, this grounded mother. Would he really have gone in this direction of being a guy who wanted the camera on himself, who used his one kick to rub in the face of everyone? The earlier stuff was even more in your face. It was once I got to episode 5 in season 1, once he stops his wife, Amanda almost makes him realize that he's lost his focus, and he goes to Miyagi's grave and has that conversation with Mr. Miyagi and wishes he was there. From that point on, even though he slips and falls and gets a little arrogant here and there, that's when the show started to find its balance. There's that balance word. And then now in season 4 and 5, all of that, as you peel all the layers and go into the gray areas of all these characters of the show. He never lets go of wanting to teach the ways of his mentor and realizing how important that is to have in his family, his life, his business, his friendships. I would love to see the Miyagi origin story. What was life like for him? Where does that go? What happened in World War II and when he came to the U.S. and wound up, a maintenance guy in the San Fernando Valley apartment building till this kid knocked on the door. My Cousin Vinny. Bill Gambini was, listen, they set up the movie, him and Stanley Rothenstein. 2 college kids driving across the country, accidentally takes a can of tuna, and we set up one of the funniest American comedies in cinema. It really is. Dale Lorner wrote a script that I call it the late for dinner movie. If My Cousin Vinny is on, you're going to be late for dinner. It was not the easiest part to get because at that point, 1991, the Outsiders, the Karate Kid had sort of peaked, and I was, getting close to 30 and still looking 20. But once I got into the audition, that ended right away, and it worked out, well, and I'm really proud to have that one. It was that casual cousin that everybody knew.
We got an attorney in the family. Great, who? My Cousin Vinny.
So it was about finding that and defining that. And it was really in those scenes with the great Bruce McGill, played Sheriff Farley. I love those scenes with him. People come up to me with Kensington and say, "You're right, I shot the clerk." I said, only if I put a question mark at the end of it.
And then what?
We went out to the car, and that's it.
When'd you shoot him?
What?
At what point did you shoot the clerk?
I shot the clerk.
Yes, when did you shoot him?
I shot the clerk.
The stuff in the courtroom was more challenging because for me, we're 10-hour days with big courtroom scenes where you're shooting one direction, then you shoot another direction. Joe was, I had met him a few times. I was on Broadway with Robert De Niro in '86 in a play called Kuma's Teddy Bear, and Joe came to see the play, and I think that's the first time I met him. Joe doesn't like to rehearse a lot, where I like the comfort of that sort of theater experience of rehearsing. He likes to, why waste it when you could capture it? And I understand that. He just had that guy down. Him and Marissa had that special chemistry. It was important that they had each other's backs. It's all about family, right? It's that old school, I could have the best Harvard lawyer to get me off the murder charge, but I know my cousin, I've seen him in a room. He will figure out a way. And there's a nice moment at the end of that film when, after they win the case, it's a kind of teary-eyed moment. And it's a comedy, but this is high stakes. The toughest thing with My Cousin Vinny is when I read the script and the scene where Joe comes in the prison cell, Vinny comes in the cell, and I'm sleeping, and Stan Rothenstein thinks he's there for something else.
Let him sleep a little bit. Look, I don't want to do this. Hey, I don't blame you. If I was in your situation, I'd want to get through this whole thing as quickly and with as little pain as possible. So, let's try our best to make it a simple in and out procedure.
And when I read that in the script, it was one of the funniest scenes on the page. And when I auditioned, I said, "Can I play the Jewish guy, Rothenstein? I'm seeing it." Fortunately, there were more than just one favorite scene in the script. The Outsiders.
Seems like it's gotta be someplace without grazers, socias. Must be someplace just plain ordinary people. Just people.
Johnny Cade in The Outsiders was the, kind of role of a lifetime for me, certainly at that point, and still holds a special place. I read that book when I was 12 years old. And that's when I immediately had a connection with this character. Not necessarily parallel that my life was his life, thankfully for me. The Outsiders was the first book that I read cover to cover without my parents saying, you have to read again tonight before school tomorrow. It was a page turner written by a 16-year-old girl, S.E. Hinton, Susie, I'm still friends with to this day. Hinton was on the set from the get-go and during the rehearsals because Frances and her wrote the screenplay. And she tells me this story. She was nervous about Johnny. It wasn't until we did the table read, she went to Frances, she says, "Now I can sleep." That book and all those characters had someone could relate to in some way. Johnny was always written as the runt of the litter, the smallest of the group. I was always the youngest looking in my class, something I'm still working on. I had sympathy and empathy for him that he was from a broken home and needed these guys, these other greasers, to be the family that he felt a part of. Reading the book at 12, I was beginning to feel that. When I heard they were making a movie, and then I heard it was being directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and that audition process, I just wanted that role so bad. I didn't want any other role. He cast that film with everyone, all the actors being in one room. He wanted to mix and match and see who connected and create that ensemble. Anytime he asked me, they said, "Well, you could read Two Bit or you could read Soda Pop." I said, "Well, but I'm here. I'd like to read for Johnny." I was like, this is the guy. I was like casting myself. So the balls of me to do that. I mean, just to be in a Francis Ford Coppola movie. I was like, no, I want to be in this movie playing this role. And he still is a character, one of my favorite performances and favorite experiences. And that cast rivals any cast ever put together.
Hey, Johnny, man. What you doing, bro?
Things would go a lot better if the socials stayed on the south side of town, man.
Yeah, well, don't you worry about that, Johnny, because we're gonna have it out with them sooner or later. Sure as hell are. They keep coming over to our side of town. Damn right.
Those the same guys that got you?
No, no other guys.
We rehearsed for about 2 weeks, which is rare. So we had a little bit of a theater camp going. Francis liked to create that. And one of the things early on, he looked at me, he goes, "You're too Long Island. You're too put together. I'm going to give you like $5 and that's all you have to spend the whole day. And you need to get 3 meals out of it and you need to find a place to sleep and all this stuff." So I slept out in a park, with newspapers kind of on me. It was cold, but I wound up turning in probably about 3 in the morning. I didn't want to stay out there all night, but it was like just part, it was like acting lessons. It was like a little bit of a method, experience if I haven't experienced that. The scene in the hospital post the church fire.
Johnny, you okay?
Oh, yeah. Just hurts sometimes. Usually don't. Because I can't feel anything below the middle of my back. Pretty bad off, ain't I, pony boy?
We shot that was one day, and I wound up just staying in there all day. Never got up once. I just stayed in this for probably 12 hours, and because that's what it would be. He had no family, really. He just had the greasers and the guys. And I just said, how do you play a broken back and burns? Like, I don't, I could play being hurt by someone, being heartbroken. It was just really about just taking those moments, like the isolated moments and the quiet moments, and just knowing that that life has changed forever. And at the end of the film, when Pony Boy opens the book and gets the letter from Johnny, and it's this beautiful moment, I'm just kind of, just reading, telling him, understanding a little bit about what nothing gold can stay means.
Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold.
Right time, right role, and lucky for me, it worked. Movies are defined based over time. I mean, you could go down the list and say Apocalypse Now or The Godfather, but if you ask someone what won the Oscar 2 years ago, they forget. They become what they are over time. And, with The Outsiders and My Cousin Vinny and The Karate Kid, for that matter, they have stood the test of time